And now, the best 60-ish seconds of your week.
This week, we witnessed the Joe Biden speech to the nation and to the United States Congress in front of a partially filled House gallery and floor, which I'm not sure really sends the right signal to the rest of the world. But what we heard was really not surprising. It was more and more big government, bigger and bigger all the time, to the point where AOC is now telling us that she is pleasantly surprised by the direction that the Biden administration has taken, meaning that they've gone even further to the left than she thought. And every proposal he has is chock full of gigantic spending, meaning that our children and grandchildren are going to be saddled with enormous debt. You know, 50 years ago, they were saying that a government big enough to give you everything you wanted was big enough to take it all away. You'll have to tell me what's changed in the last half century. Of course, the fact that Biden never mentions who's going to pay for all of this is significant, because taxes are an integral part of every plan he's proposed. Now, he says it's only taxes on the quote-unquote rich and corporations, meaning American business. But here's a fundamental economic truth. If you tax something, you get less of it. So what does Joe Biden propose that we tax? Work, investment, savings, etc. The corollary to that is that if you subsidize something, you get more of it. And what does Biden propose that we subsidize? Work requirements eliminated from social spending. That's a disconnection that hasn't existed over the course of the past 25 years, because even Bill Clinton thought it was important to tie work requirements to social spending. That apparently now, if Biden and the Congress get their way, will go out the window, and will be subsidizing payments to people without any requirement of work, and will be taxing the living bejeebies out of everybody else. Because ultimately, when corporations, i.e. American business, is taxed at an even higher rate, they become both less competitive, create less jobs, and pass those taxes on to others. Because ultimately, despite all the demagogic rhetoric, taxes are ultimately always passed on, because businesses are more tax collectors than they are taxpayers. Biden ended his speech on a really bizarre note. Rather than saying, "God bless America," he said, "Thanks for your patience." That really struck me as very strange. Maybe it did you as well, but I can tell you this: the American people are not going to have much patience for an even bigger and bigger bloated federal bureaucracy that takes more and more money out of the pockets of hard-working, earning Americans to pay for it all. After the Biden speech, we saw Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina deliver what was really an extraordinary speech. And look what the left did to him. The very next day, he's Uncle Tim and everything else. Stuff that if conservatives have ever said would have been castigated by the media for weeks. They should be as well, because what they said about Senator Tim Scott was outrageous. What he said about America was exactly right. This is not a racist nation. For all of its imperfections, that's something that simply can't be said. And for all of our faults, America still is the greatest nation in the history of civilization. And this week, the Census Bureau finally rolled out much of the data necessary for the states to do reapportionment of both the state legislative seats and congressional seats for the 2022 elections. And as no surprise to any, the states in the South and West continue to pick up seats, with the exception of California, interestingly, and states with high taxes, high regulation, in the industrial Northeast in particular, continue to lose seats. My home state of Pennsylvania lost a seat again this time. And a lot of folks are saying to me, "Charlie, we've lost a seat for, a lot of the recent cycles of reapportionment." And the answer is, yes, we have. But it goes a lot deeper than that. Over the course of the last 100 years, actually 90 to be more precise, we've had our congressional delegation in Pennsylvania more than cut in half. Imagine that. There are only 4 states in the Union that even have 19 members of Congress in their delegation. We've lost that many seats. Why? Because our children and theirs are going south and west to follow opportunity, because higher taxes and more regulation don't yield better jobs and better futures. It's not just the sun and the nice weather of Arizona and Florida and Texas and South Carolina and other places where folks are heading. It's because they are low tax states. And the states that don't get that are going to continue to lose populations, to be stagnant in their economies, to not have the opportunities that others have. And it's high time that we readjusted our thinking to look a lot more friendly to opportunity, to individual freedom, and to futures of success. It's the first Saturday in May, and it's Derby Day as Churchill Downs hosts the Run for the Roses and the greatest 2 minutes in sports. And a lot of folks like me to handicap things. So let's take a look at the field, which is always very interesting. Essential Quality is the early favorite, but there are a couple of other interesting horses to take a look at. First, there's Berberich, which with an African-American mount would be the first black jockey to win the Derby in over 100 years. Next, there's Hidden Stash with a female trainer. If that were to come in at number 1, it would be the first horse ever trained by a woman to win the Derby. But how can I possibly tell you to bet on anything other than Hot Rod Charlie? Because for now, that is the best 60-ish seconds of your week.